Right. Ooh, okay, welcome. Hello. This is Tiger, just your friendly neighborhood Tiger Lily. Today is May 9th, 2020, and this is Riddle Me This episode 6. Riddle Me This is a little game I've been playing lately because I feel like we're at a place right now where we should be asking questions about the stuff that's got us really freaked out. So, Riddle Me This, episode 6, where we're going to talk about some questions that have me really freaked out. And we'll try and wake some unicorns, shall we? Okay, ooh, so today we've got some questions about contact tracing first. And I'm gonna preface this by saying that I know that a lot of what I'm about to describe, a lot of what I'm about to reference, is gonna sound like I'm being extremist. It's gonna sound like I've got a tinfoil hat on my head all the time. But I do have to say, you guys, before I say any of what I'm about to say, when you have those moments where you're like, that can't possibly be true, there's no way, you've got that doubt, that moment of this is a conspiracy theory, all of those things that are going to be their behavior, or excuse me, their thought responses that are going to be coming up with a lot of the stuff that I'm going to say, and it's going to be natural for that to happen. But what you can do very easily is go online and research for yourself all of the stuff that I'm about to talk about so that you can get an understanding of what I'm talking about, and then use your own best judgment. Take all of your own perspectives and your knowledge and things that I don't know that you do, and put them all together in a mishmash and see what your own individual thought process comes out to be. And then with that conclusion, proceed from there, knowing that you've actually done some due diligence. All I'm doing here is posing some questions in order to spur some thought to some things that I don't think we're quite thinking all the way through, and making a lot of really irreparable decisions and causing a lot of irreparable damage, frankly, with some of the things that we're doing that we're not actually talking about all the way through to their end conclusion. So, with contact tracing, a lot of you may not know what it is, some of you may. So, I'm just going to start kind of from the beginning. Right now, we've got, for example, a prominent figure is Bill Clinton, but there are a number of others who are calling for contact tracing. I think I saw that Governor Cuomo out of New York and Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York, with contact tracing, here's the thing. So, what is contact tracing? First of all, let's just start there. The people, I guess, who are endorsing it are not necessarily completely beside the point, but if we break it down and kind of understand what it is, maybe the reason for wondering who is endorsing this idea is going to be a little bit more clear to us. So, contact tracing is this idea that we can identify the way that the virus spreads, or the quickness of that spread, or the commonalities with that spread, or identifying markers with data that we could essentially, in theory, be able to use and kind of amass together, and then identify what points we might need to pivot to or from. So, to give you an example, there is already contact tracing in place and has already been used in various applications, not just in the health application, but including the SARS virus, whole panic that went around when the SARS virus was going around killing people not too long ago, and there was a contact tracing program implemented for that purpose. So right now what's happening is that they're looking at doing a similar type of contact tracing, which is the gathering of data, and I'm going to talk about how they do this in a second so that you can fully understand what contact tracing is, but that's when we're going to talk about why they're calling it that. So the contact tracing is the gathering of data to put it into some type of model, to then make algorithmic predictions based on, for example, where we need to divert more medicine, where we need more resources in the healthcare facilities, all that kind of stuff, where we can predict things being needed, where we can predict things happening, all that kind of stuff. This is what is basically being said about contact tracing and what it is. As I've mentioned previously, have spoken with the health department and have been told that the purpose for the data logging with employee temperatures, as well as I was told with other types of trying to remember what it was, body symptom checking, information. So it's not just the temperature itself, it's other factors that they're looking to log. But certain things that they're looking to log here in Utah in particular, again, I just spoke with the State Department here, are pieces of data they're going to be amassed in this collection of information. Now, these are examples, but I actually frankly don't know what else is going to be pulled into this data. I don't know who's going to be looking at it. And when I spoke with the State Department or with the State Health Department, they also couldn't tell me who's going to be looking at this information, who's going to have access to it. They couldn't tell me any information on how they're going to protect that data or how they're going to ensure that that data doesn't get, released in such a way so as to compromise the person to whom that data belongs. And this data is medical information. It's personal medical information. And there are laws against that type of thing just being out in the open and not protected. So there aren't stipulations given by the health department here. They're saying collect employee data, but they're not giving any guidelines or stipulations on make sure you do it safely and keep it under lock and key. Like there is none of that as well. So it has to also be posited that even the businesses who are going to be doing this, taking their employees' data, writing it down in a book for the Gestapo to come and find later, those businesses may not necessarily realize that the State Department is not necessarily the entity that's going to be checking this information, that's going to hold on to it, that's going to look for it, that's going to want it, that's going to calculate anything off of it. They basically gave me the impression that they don't think the State Department will ever see that information. So I have a couple of thoughts on that because there are right now a couple of things happening that are kind of like an interim. So right now what's happening is there are regulations, I assume elsewhere, but for sure here in Utah, where that's being asked to be done of businesses. Businesses are being asked to comply with that. And right now, there is no army of contact tracers going around. So right now, what's happening is these business owners are complying out of their own volition. But because they're complying of their own volition, they are essentially acknowledging or what would it be, acquiescing. They're essentially accepting that this is something that will be done, that it's a new normal for whatever value that stupid phrase has. And these business owners may not realize, like I said, that not only do we not know who's going to have access to all of this information, but it directly puts the employees whose information is being logged at risk, because these individuals, these employees, can be pegged for any number of things. They can be detained for any number of things. If heaven forbid, things go sideways with a lawsuit because somebody dies, that employee is one of the most controlled people who's coming in and out of that building if they're the only people being logged in that book, which that was what I was told by the health department, was that there was no need to log the the body symptom data of 250 plus people coming in and out of a couple of different studios here that we manage, and yet it's necessary to log all of the employees' data, even though they're the ones I probably would have the closest ability to find out whether they've got symptoms at home or in whether they have symptoms. It's just ridiculous. Okay, now let's take this a step further, because this rabbit hole with the contact tracing, it it really is one of those things that, to me, I'm like, I feel like I'm screaming on the side of the road, like waving at people not to cross the road because there's a huge semi coming by, and they're like, "Do do do, we're gonna cross the road," and I'm like, "No." Okay, the semi is a contact tracers. We can't allow this to just happen and to be bulldozed by it, and then 10 years from now be all like, "Oh, well, it's just the normal. It's just the thing that happens," just like we are now about all of the things that we know that we knew back when Facebook started recording our data and doing emotional manipulation, psychological studies on their users, and Google started tracking people's location data even when they didn't opt into it. Like, stuff like that was happening, and we knew about it as it was happening, and nobody stopped it. And now that's our lives. That's exactly why we are where we are today, talking about contact tracers in 2020. And let's move now. I'm getting super heated up, so this is the perfect time to get to this point. Let's move now to talk about what contact traces, why the word tracing, why the word contact, or the phrase contact tracing. So the word tracing specifically is all about being able to identify one piece of data and how it relates to another piece of data. So if you think that all of these lies, by the way, and documentable, go look it up, do some research, take a break from Netflix for a night and get on YouTube if that's what it takes, or get on whatever platform is going to float your boat and find out all of this information. Okay. So the tracing is taking one piece of data to another. And it's not the case, even though we are being told these lies, that the data that's pulled from your phone is completely anonymous when it gets to its end location, like the advertisers. You know as well as I do that when you're on Facebook, after just having talked to your friend about a new pair of shoes, you get on Facebook and then you see that pair of shoes in the ad. That is not accidental. And if you still think it is, please go educate yourself. Please. It's time. All of that kind of stuff is intentional. And here's the deal. If you think that it doesn't happen, you're kind of in this like completely otherworldly, blissfully and willfully ignorant place. If you think that if you accept that it's happening and you think that it's happening just because people want to sell you more stuff, you're kind of in this like denial place. When we talk about the 7 stages of grief, denial. You're not quite seeing that it's really happening. Even though you think that first stage I just talked about is denial, that's like something else entirely. If you believe that this is about selling you products, if you believe that it's about the money, if you believe that it's about the liberals and the conservatives, if you think that it's about the duopoly, if you think that it's about all of these left and right narratives, gun rights or no gun rights, transgender bathrooms or no transgender bathrooms, if you think it's about trying to like sell you on one of these two narratives, you're missing the entire point. You're still in denial. We're going to take this all the way into the next phase of your understanding of what this is and talk about this from the perspective of we are setting up for something that is down the line. Okay, so when I'm talking about what I'm talking about right now, it sounds extreme because what is actually happening right now is prep for what we're going to see down the line. That's what I'm showing you is what's down the line. So what you're seeing right now, hearing what's coming down the line is going to feel really out of context because why would it feel right now like there's this huge thing coming? Why would it feel like right now the contact tracing is going to be a very invasive and terrible idea? They wouldn't let you think that or they wouldn't be able to sell you on it. They want your information. They want you to comply. They want you to let them take all of the liberties that they can, meaning that they can detain you if they suspect that you're the one who got that 2-year-old sick that died last week and you're the one who was on the log. But the 2-year-old's mom was not on the log, and the 2-year-old's mom had lunch with the neighbor, and the neighbor is the one who actually had coronavirus, passed it to the mom who had lunch and then came to the studio and then got you sick. I'm obviously using very specific examples, but these are the things that I want you to think about because these are the scenarios that feel like when they're reported, they feel like they're loopholes, but it's not. This is what's going to go down. They're talking about taking people out of their homes when they've tested positive and they need to enforce a quarantine upon a family. What? Are you kidding me? Look these things up. These are being talked about. They are real ideas being actually spoken about on public forums where they're talking about moving it forward and putting it into law. So let's see. An interesting thing that I think that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to is the pre-crime aspect of this and again, we're going to talk about all of these things that are kind of the reason that it's called contact tracing. The pre-crime component to the contact tracing program is extremely worrisome because here's what we've got. We've essentially got people, and again, the contact tracing program is coming. It is a concept right now for this particular COVID-19 application. Right now, we're in COVID-19. People want to see what the testing looks like, what the numbers look like, and all of that kind of stuff. There are people, again, like I said, Bill Clinton and a bunch of other people have been publicly supporting the contact tracing program to address this specific pandemic. Again, look up other versions of contact tracing. And then we're going to talk about what contact tracing really comes from because it goes even further back before contact tracing started being used as the word to describe this thing. So in 2011, it was in 2011 that there was a bill, HR 1981. So look that one up. Extremely Orwellian, but it basically was the pre-crime introduction of legislation. And I don't think that it was the first piece of legislation that introduced pre-crime elements, but let's talk about what pre-crime is. Pre-crime is this, it's a phrase that basically encompasses any type of policing that is based on the prediction that something is going to happen. So, for example, in this specific case, just to get really real, what I'm talking about is these contact tracers are secret police who will be coming around to gather information and then do something with it on behalf of state government, private partnered agencies or whomever it is, like I said, that these people, that the information is going to get to. So if you're not familiar with what secret police is, let's talk about secret police. Secret police is the type of organization that goes around and performs illicit or not illicit, but um, inappropriate in terms of the way that policing should happen. Um, Campaigns, if you will, on the populace. Now, these campaigns can be anywhere from, for example, racial genocide to collecting information about people's personal medical information. Do you see what I'm saying, you guys? If they introduce this concept, this program as contact tracing, and they just say, oh, it's just the Red Cross coming around to knock on your door, make sure that you've had access to your test. And if you haven't, they're going to give you one right there. You have all seen the apocalyptic movies where the guy who is the soldier who is like this, you know, just guilty and really broody. There are so many of these movies. Let's actually look them up. You know what? We're just going to do this live right here. So on the Hunger Games, let's see if I can find the name of this guy. Dun-dun-dun-dun. It's that one guy plays him, Liam Hemsworth, Gale Hawthorne. So Gale Hawthorne is, and you know what? I can actually even share it. So I'm going to do that. Let's see here. Oh, can I? Maybe I can't. Bear with me, guys. It's a live stream, so we're making it work. Drop me a line in the comments right now while I figure this out. Let me know what you think about what I'm talking about, whether I'm way off base, if I'm totally confusing you, all that goods. I don't think it's gonna let me actually share my screen. That's kind of sad and bummed about that. But okay, back to this. So Liam Hemsworth plays Gale Hawthorne in the Hunger Games. That's the character that I'm talking about in the Hunger Games. Let's think of another one. Let's see. Apocalyptic movies. Oh, I know. The Handmaid's Tale. There's one. What's his name? In The Handmaid's Tale, the character's name is Nick Blaine. Max Minghella plays Nick Blaine in The Handmaid's Tale, and that's the character that I'm talking about. So I'll stop there. If you've seen either of those two shows, you will probably catch on to what I'm talking about. If you haven't, watch a couple episodes of The Handmaid's Tale or watch the Hunger Games. These are really, really interesting pieces of media to look at and to observe and then to think about overlaid on our current events, especially The Handmaid's Tale. I can't even tell you how disturbing some of the narration that Elizabeth Moss's character Offred does especially in the early first season episodes. That is extremely harrowing to compare to what's happening right now, things like her talking about the border crossing closings and stuff like that. So again, back to this character is the brooding character who has basically we are led to believe that this character is duped into joining the army. Now, there aren't many of these apocalyptic movies that post-apocalyptic movies that I have seen that really go into the why or the how of that character's development, but there's one of these characters in most of these movies. And from my perspective, what we're meant to gather from these characters in a general sense, obviously each movie has its own nuances to this, but I think that one of the things that I typically notice in those characters is that they almost give off the impression that they feel obligated or they feel bound or they feel stuck in this army, in this police force, in this, secret service type force, or whatever the specific kind of nuanced angle that this particular force is playing in that particular media. But if you go and look through some post-apocalyptic movies that you have seen, you will probably notice there is one of these characters, and they do typically have this air about them of having been either suckered in to a mission that they originally believed in that warped over time, or they have been kind of duped into thinking that they were joining one thing and really it turned out to be something different. There are a number of ways that that could play out, and it completely just depends on the scenario. And I don't have all the answers, but how can we not draw this parallel right now? How can we not take a second, take a step back and breathe and think to ourselves, actually, it probably isn't a great idea for us to decide that the government can send anybody they want to our house at any time they want to discover whether we have had contact with some specific person, to ask us to give them information about specific people, where we've been, what we've been doing, who we've seen, what they have seen or done. Things like that are the exact scenarios that this contact tracing program is meant to implement. And then take that where that is meant to go is that these contact tracers, when they get to your house and they're asking you all these questions, they're going to want to test you. They're going to want to detain you and bring you into a quarantine zone. They're going to want to test everybody else in your house. They're going to want to go through your contact list and ask you everybody else that you've come in contact with. And by the way, they will be able to simply take your phone and find out who you've been in contact with, regardless of what you tell them, because we never stopped them from having that power, using it, getting away with it. And even when we found out about them, giving them permission by not doing anything about it. Putting two and two and four together. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about probably one of the things that's going to be a little bit even, well, actually, before we do that, let's talk about the database. So Bill Gates is one person who has highly advocated for this idea, but I know that it's not actually the first time that it's been brought up. And by the way, contact tracing, before anybody has anything to say about Trump and what his administration is or is not doing about contact tracing, so that you guys are aware, contact tracing was proposed by the Obama administration. That, like I said, this is not new. So this is not a left-right thing. It's not a red blue thing. It's not any kind of thing other than people. We should not be allowing any government or private agency to tell us that we owe them personal information about our bodies, about our lives, our interactions, our touch points, where we're going, what we're doing. Even though they already have this information and the ability to find out that information, it is not okay for us to just be like, oh, well, they already have it. They can already probably piece together the rest of it. And they probably might as well know whether I've been next to anybody who's been sick. So why not? No, guys, let's not opt into this crazy, crazy idea of secret policing ourselves and giving into this, because next thing we know, we have the Gestapo. Next thing we know, we have the secret police from the Soviet Union. These things are the immediate consequences of what's happening right now, evolving because we don't do anything about it. If we don't do anything about it, we will find ourselves in these positions. And then, then we'll be kicking ourselves because we should have stopped the secret police. Why didn't we see them coming? Now they're tear gassing us and keeping us in our homes and taking our children away. This is the moment, guys, right here. Before it's actually happening, this is the moment to actually wake up, pay attention to it, realize that that's what's coming next, and stop it from happening. If you wait until you're convinced that this is happening, it will be already happening to the degree that it will be too late, guys. I'm so frustrated with this. I've had several conversations today about contact tracing that have been incredibly frustrating, because people are saying things like, well, a drone might as well be able to do that. It doesn't have to be a person. So why are you afraid of it? I'm like, yeah, I don't want a drone to be able to be flying around because the government decides that now we just have police drones that fly around and take your temperature at random times during the day. Like, what? Think about where that goes, guys. The next thing that goes to is that then it's a lie detector in the drone, and it's reading your body temperature, and it's reading your facial expressions to see whether you're lying or hiding something or thinking about something that they don't want you to be thinking about, like in response to something that you're talking about, because they can also hear you. These things are all coming together and being connected, and I know that we don't want to think that it's going to happen, or that it's going to be a problem, or that we're going to experience some kind of post-apocalyptic nightmare that we've seen portrayed in front of us. But why do you think we're seeing all that portrayed in front of us? It's so that we are self-predicting the events that are happening, so that when we see that they're starting to barely talk about lockdowns, we start telling each other that we're about to lock down. That's why. they put all this stuff in the media so that we can see it over and over and over. It's called predictive programming. Look it up. Okay, so this database, I was talking about the the ability for a piece of machinery or whatever to be able to come and read your information and whatnot. So that's tying your information to a medical based, and what they're saying is that it's going to be DNA based or somehow biometrically based um, database. And let me basically, break down what that means. What that means is your fingerprints or your DNA sample or something that is specifically tied to your own individual genetic code is the basis for this ID system. As opposed to right now, you have a driver's license ID number, you have a passport number. Those numbers are arbitrarily assigned to you. They don't necessarily mean anything. But right now, what they're talking about is tying this directly to your person so that it can be absolutely verified. Absolutely meaning completely, like 100% for sure verified in a moment of a drone flying past, as opposed to a drone having to, ask you for your ID. Like, is that really effective for a drone? Well, no, but it is effective for a contact tracer who's going to come in and pilot the program of actually contact tracing, walking the population as far as the, routes of the city and everything like that, to gather as much information as possible, and then to identify how a drone could then take that mapping data, eat it like computers do, spit out some information that it can use to then program itself to do the same thing. This is the way. And so when somebody told me a drone could do it, I'm like, well, a drone could do it, but a drone's not going to do it yet, because we need an army of people to do it. Just like, Google sent out a bunch of people before they sent out a bunch of automated cars to do the mapping of their Google Maps product. It wasn't just straight to automatic cars are going to be driving the street so that they can like take pictures of the signage and stuff. No, that happened by people driving those cars first. So what we're seeing right now is what's coming down the pipe, and what's happening, or down the pike, and what's happening right now is they're setting up for having this mass surveillance thing. So where you see it as this innocent thing right now, where it's just going to be a person in front of you, that person in front of you, look through time and see that person a jackboot thug. See that person as a drone. See that person as whatever you want to see them as, but it's not. What my point is right now is that if we allow it to be a person first, then that program is installed and that program is running, and that program is going to be a lot harder to take down if we wait until it's in place versus if we just don't let it happen in the first place. So think, do you want to be a walking, subject of a lie detector test? Do you want to be subject to the type of facial recognition that's happening in China, where, if you guys don't know, China has a camera system that's on every street corner basically, and it will be able to find anybody. You plug in the name of somebody into your database, and you can find the person by facial recognition, pinpoint their location in the city within like 5 minutes, I think. We don't want that here. I don't think. I don't want that here. I don't want it to be the case that if somebody has any minute gripe against me, they can use it against me. But frankly, it's not about that. I don't want that to be the case, because there is a certain level of invasion where you don't have your thoughts to yourself when somebody's listening and watching and everything. Every single thought you have to self edit when you're aware that somebody's watching or thinking about you. Now, you may be really good at not caring what anybody else thinks, but that doesn't mean that you're not self editing certain parts of your life when you know that they're going to be influencing you. So if you only add on, the more awareness you have of these people as the contact tracers come around, as the drone is flying around, as you see the drone following you to work, like all of these different things where you've got cameras on every street corner, it will warp the psychological way that we not only interact with each other, with, in groups, in, individual pairs, in internally ourselves, like as a society as a whole. This is going to completely change the entire way that we even exist as people and see ourselves as human beings if this goes mass scale. Now, I would be curious to talk to some people in China who have like seen the transition and who would be able to speak to the way that that's, felt for them, because I cannot imagine that that's not a huge drastic change when you have that level of surveillance imposed upon you. The violation of privacy, guys, it's just freaking ridiculous. Okay, I want to go through the next couple questions pretty quickly. I am feeling like the first question is going to be kind of the big one of the day, and then these other two questions, I like that they're kind of like what questions. So here I have Elizabeth Warren. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so I've been talking recently about how interesting it is that Bernie endorses Biden and drops out of the race, kind of similar to when he did that in 2016 against Hillary Clinton during the primaries then. And now Biden's come under fire over all of these sexual assault accusations that are coming out into the main like forefront of the mainstream media main headlines now. And we've also got, let's see. Oh, I well, so okay, here's what ended up happening. Let me actually back up and start there. So I was looking at something on YouTube and I got a notification from YouTube last night. This is probably like 1 in the morning or something. I got a notification that specifically popped up, and the title of the video in the notification was Senator. No, let's see. Elizabeth Warren announces her 2020 presidential election campaign, and I was like, that's weird because Elizabeth Warren had announced her presidential campaign way back in, I think, August last year, 2019. And then she dropped out of the race pretty early on. She wasn't doing well in the very early pollings. And so she hadn't been in the race. And I was like, that's craziness. I wonder, because I've been positing and I've been talking about this lately, I wonder if this is who's going to come in and kind of fill in for now Biden can't be an effective candidate for the DNC. So they kick him out and bring somebody else in. Is it going to be Elizabeth Warren? The timing was really interesting. Well, the timing was super interesting to the point where I was already going to talk about this today. But here's what happened. Then I'm looking at it, and I'm not kidding you guys. I'm looking at this video and it says May 8th on the date of the video. And I'm just gonna put this on the title of the screen. So when you get to this video, you probably will have already seen it. It's the picture of the Elizabeth Warren campaign. And it's gonna have a split screen where one of them says May 8th as the publication date of the video, and it's Fox News's channel. So it's an official video from Fox News' channel, but the thing says unlisted on it when you actually go to the link of the video. And I'll put the link in the description of this video here. When you go to it, it says unlisted, which seems strange to me that it would have given me a notification to come watch the video, and yet it's unlisted, which means that when you go to Fox News's main homepage of their channel, you can't find that video on their homepage of their channel. You can't actually search for it and see where it's at. Which why is it unlisted and being sent to me in a notification? I don't know how that works, but that seems really strange. And the little I do know about YouTube, I'm trying to rack my brain. For those of you who know me, I'm a little bit of a computer nerd. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I don't really know how that kind of thing would get triggered. So as I'm looking at this, I refresh the page at one point, and then it says May 9th, as if things couldn't get any weirder. So then I scroll down and I'm looking through the comments, and there are people who are saying basically the same thing, that they're getting notifications and onslaught of videos posted into their news or into their updates feed from YouTube that are old videos that are posted with the appearance that they're new. So I don't know, but it's weird. And it's weird that when you actually watch the video of Elizabeth Warren's announcement of her presidential election campaign, it's really wild because when I first watched it, I hadn't originally seen it. And so it looked to me like she was talking about coronavirus and our current situation. And every single thing she said was perfectly on par with talking about our current situation, telling people that we're going to go into a period of poverty, but we're going to like band together as a people and survive, using this analogy of the way that her languaging was all about the fight, that we have to come together and we'll get through it. And at the end of the tunnel, we'll be a united people because we fought. And this very wartime, mentality as far as the rhetoric and the vocabulary that she was using and all of that. And then it turns out that this wasn't even a recent video. It was completely before Coronapocalypse. So I posit to you, why would a video like this, titled that way, unlisted, be posted as a notification somehow to a bunch of people? The only other video that I was able to find in the comments that was named that people were also seeing reposted or whatever, but being an old video, because there were a bunch of people who said that they saw old videos posted, multiple. But the only other one that I saw was, it said that in 2018, it was the one of President Trump in 2018 talking about wanting $5 million for the border wall, which, if Elizabeth Warren's campaign video posted accidentally, is very pertinent to this current situation, and the border wall is also very pertinent to this current situation, it happens to be the case, or it feels a little bit nuanced. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not the type of person who believes like everything has a devious underlying to it. I am the type of person that believes that if you ask more questions rather than shrugging things off or assuming that couldn't possibly, that something couldn't possibly be because of how, because of how uncomfortable it is to think that it could possibly be, the questions route seems a lot more insightful and it seems a lot more interesting. And what I want to do is have you take that into this final question that I have, and see what you can come up with as far as your own questions in terms of challenging for yourself the thing that you've been programmed to believe, which is that Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives, red party or blue party and red party respectively, are this like two different factions of our society, and they believe completely different things, and they should be viewed as kind of at odds with each other for most things. And even if we have sometimes both of those two parties can like come together and be bipartisan, like all of these languaging buzzwords you've probably heard a lot. And I want to talk about how the duality of the two party paradigm is such an illusion that you are being duped without realizing it. So what's happening is the whole thing, the whole idea, the whole premise, the entire setup of this red party, blue party, Democrat, Republican thing, it's a farce. It means nothing. There is no two party anything. It is one organization of politics. It's the government. It's one organization of politics. And to help you wrap your mind around that, the simplest way to kind of start accepting that is to think and realize that most of the people who stay in power, positions of power, are the people who aren't elected, they're appointed. And those are the people who, well, in certain respects, let me walk that back because that's actually inaccurate the way that I phrased it. What I'm trying to illustrate is that the people who stay in power, regardless of whether there's a Democrat or Republican, the people who stay in their own positions, those are the people who are essentially kind of carrying the day to day of all the things. Does the president have influence? I'm sure he has plenty of influence, and nobody should ever take that away from him, especially Trump, because he's the man of influence and the big red tie. But we don't have the actual system that they're trying to pretend to us that we have, which is that we've got some people on one side of the aisle and some people on another side of the aisle, and that they can't ever get on the same page about certain things. That's not the way humans work. Do you know any situation where you are trying to work with somebody and they are so sold, so sold on the fact that shoes should be blue that they can't actually see the fact that shoes are red actually in the room? No, like that's not how humans interact. So why would it be the case that we should believe that supposedly all these professional people who are up there reporting, what is it, accountable to us, we the people, are up there, and on behalf of us, they're all bickering over what color their tie is, or what color their ticket is, whatever party they're aligned to, whatever ideology they've pledged their allegiance to. No, their allegiance is to America. Their allegiance is to the Constitution, to we the people. That's the way that that goes. And so when we start letting ourselves get caught up in that Democrat, Republican, even if you don't think you are, when you start saying things like, oh, the Democrats won't let X, Y, and Z happen, that's an illusion. If somebody wants something done, they're going to get it done. And we've seen that demonstrated over and over and over. And that was before the stuff started coming out where now presidents and governors and mayors can just do whatever they want by signing an executive order. That's not the way that this is supposed to go down. But we've allowed ourselves to decide that it's too difficult to keep up with our job and our kids and our friends and our family and all of that kind of stuff, and then also watch the absolute crapshoot of a government our heads down and not pay full it's uncomfortable knowing that these people are corrupt and that they're doing things that are absolutely monstrous, and that they are killing people, that they are making people sick, that they are letting corporations get away with killing people, that they're putting those corporations in charge of your health. They're going to send those people to your door. Look up the Clinton Foundation, look up the AmeriCorps. The people who are being talked about spearheading this contact tracing program have a terrible track record. I'm talking sexual misconduct in their organization, mishandling of information. There is no way, there is no way that we should just let them all put these pieces into place because we're not able to have the uncomfortable conversations and ask the uncomfortable conversations because we're that overwhelmed. I get it, guys. I get that we're overwhelmed, but fam, this is not the time to let them do whatever they want. Stand up. Guys, write your questions in the comments below. If you had any of these questions that resonated with you, thumbs up or down. If you didn't, if you thought something was interesting or if you thought it was not, let me know. Let your fellow people know. Let's drop some red pills. Let's talk to some people. Let's ask some questions. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, thumbs it up, thumbs it down, whatever your flavor, but engage with me. Help me figure out what's actually happening. Even if you think that I'm completely wrong, I want to know. Let's talk about it. Throw some comments down in the chat below. Don't forget to subscribe and click that little notification bell so that you get updates. And go wake some unicorns, fam.